I've enjoyed reading his work as the NFL columnist, or one of them, on Bleacher Report, and figured let's give him a call. Let's get him on the Rich Eisen Show, and now here he is, Mike Tanier, here on the program. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing great, but now you've got me checking out my IMDb page to see where I rank.
Well, it's let's just put it this way. It's a humbling experience. I wouldn't advise doing it, Mike.
Well, I dropped 13,570 spots this week alone. I must have made one too many Jameis Winston jokes.
You could have. I enjoyed the tweeting of the Tebow pretzel yesterday, the Tebowing pretzel in Philadelphia, and then the subsequent pretzel broken up into pieces saying that you found a Bradford pretzel. I like that one. How do you, Mike?
Yeah, the Sam Bradford pretzel tore its ACL as I tried to take it out of the bag, which was disturbing. You know, the Tebow pretzels are okay, but they only come complete with salt about 48% of the time.
Well, you're 1 mile away from the Eagles facility. That's where you're even calling in from right now. What to make about this? What do we make about the Tebow signing for 1 year on a 1 year deal, Mike?
I think when it comes to Tim Tebow, you're talking to the wrong guy. You need like the amazing James Randi or somebody like that, because this is more like a paranormal phenomenon than reality here. And you know, I've in the last 24 hours, I've seen every one of the Tim Tebow explanations, the Timsplanations of what's going on. That he's going to be the goal line guy, he's going to be the short yardage, the 2-point conversion guy, the package guy, the punt protector guy, whatever you want to name it. It's the same ones we heard with the Jets and the same things that we heard with the Patriots. And my question with that is, why is Tim Tebow the only guy who's ever like thought of in this way? How come we never hear, Mike Vick's going to be the package guy, or Terrell Pryor's going to be the package guy? It's like more of that Tim Tebow magical thinking, and you combine it with Chip Kelly magical thinking, and you really have something here that I think no one can explain. It's unexplained paranormal phenomenon. You need a skeptic. You don't need me.
Well, you could say the same thing about anything Chip Kelly's done over the last month, Mike, if you think about it.
It has been the journalistic equivalent of an out-of-body experience. I heard some of your listeners calling about DeMarco Murray. Yeah, you're at the point now that you forgot that the NFL's leading rusher is now in Philadelphia because so many other things have happened. That's the kind of thing that just falls by the wayside.
Yeah, and of course, and then comes the draft in 9 days. I'm on the phone with Mike Tanier of the Bleacher Report, the NFL lead writer, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what do you think 9 days from now? Is it Winston at the top of the draft, Mike?
It's Winston at the top of the draft. I think that's foregone. I think Leo Williams, the defensive tackle from USC, is foregone at number 2, the Tennessee Titans. And then after that, everything, the probabilities just open up after that, and like all manner of things can happen.
So you don't put any credence into a fire behind this smoke out of San Diego that San Diego might send Phillip Rivers to Tennessee the moment it secures the rights to Marcus Mariota?
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that takes you all the way up to number 2. I think with that second pick, the Titans are going to look for a team that's got a case of the screaming Mariotas. That could be the San Diego Chargers. It could be Chicago Bears. We could rattle off some other teams like the Jets, certainly. I don't read a lot into that Rivers statement, because even if you take LaDainian Tomlinson's thoughts at face value and say that, Rivers is kind of emotionally done, he's got 1 year left in his contract, and that mentality could lead to saying, well, I'm just going to play out this contract and then take my chances elsewhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that all sides are like looking to make a trade, and not just a trade, but a kind of a blockbuster that involves a second overall pick, Marcus Mariota, and all the other things that go with that.
So, Mike Tanier joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show from the Bleacher Report. You had an interesting column last week about doing your due diligence on the one flaw, if there is, in anybody's games. We're not talking off the field. We're talking on the field game, looking at game tape, talking to all the scouts and evaluators in the know, as you have done. What is Jameis Winston's one characteristic on the field that has given people pause over the last few weeks?
It's the interceptions, which really are a variety of flaws. The decision-making, the tendency to throw off the back foot, just kind of like the bad habits in the pocket. And I'll give you the numbers. In his final season last year, he threw 18 interceptions. Now, 18 interceptions is the most interceptions thrown by a college first-round pick type quarterback in their final season since Matt Ryan, and it's really more than anybody else you can name. You have to get to guys like Tim Couch and Ryan Leaf to get people who are anywhere close to 18 interceptions in their final college season. So, Matt Ryan is good news, but when you look at those other guys, there's a lot of bad news saying that this is a very high total and a sign that this is a decision-making process that really has to be tightened up considerably before this guy is going to be a quality NFL quarterback.
Well, what about Leonard Williams? There's few holes in his game. He's number 1 on the draft board, period, of Daniel Jeremiah, as released on NFL.com earlier today. What could be the issue with him?
Oh, Daniel Jeremiah, so many guys agree. I would put him number one as well. And the thing is, he had a slow first step. If you look at the bowl game that he played in, I think it was the Las Vegas Bowl, you'll see plays where the ball gets snapped, and it's almost like he's waiting for a text message to get off the line. And that can be a big deal when you're almost a half second late coming off the snap. Guys are going to out-leverage you. They're going to get into – blockers are going to get into position against you, and you're not going to be able to get to the ball carrier or the quarterback. That said, I really went back and looked at more Williams tape. You don't scout based on a bowl game. Those guys have been out of it for a month, and sometimes they come in and they're a little bit tentative. And he doesn't have like the explosive first step of the great pass rushers, but that's not who he is. He's a defensive end who's kind of a two-gap guy who does a lot of things well with his strength. He's fast enough, and I think I'll go with Daniel Jeremiah and everybody else. I think he probably is the best all-around player in this draft class.
So if you're saying he's waiting for a text message, is that your way of saying that Cleveland's interested in him, Mike?
Well, there you go. I think he's going to have to wait, 6 to 8 weeks until Farmer comes back.
Mike Tanier of the Bleacher Report joining me here now. Who are some of the kids that we're just not talking about, period, in this draft? Gems, small school gems that you've uncovered in a way through covering the draft, Mike?
I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of small school guys this year, and I'll give you one. Colorado State quarterback Chris Bonner. This is from Colorado State Pueblo, Colorado State would be Garrett Grayson.
Sure.
We're talking about Division II champions from Pueblo, and Chris Bonner, he's a Joe Flacco-sized, kind of Joe Flacco-shaped prospect, around 6'6.5", throws an incredible deep ball, is a play-action passer, running a pro-style offense. Of course, you got to adjust when you're watching Division II and you're out in the prairie and you're watching, sort of tumbleweeds go by when these guys are playing quarterback. But at the same time, throwing the ball 60 yards on a line is throwing the ball 60 yards on a line with accuracy. He can do that. He's got the size. I think this is a guy you're going to see picked 5th, 6th, 7th round, and a guy who sticks on a roster because there aren't a lot of quarterbacks this year that have those special qualities, that size, that arm, and that kind of raw talent that could be molded.
What about this kid from Harvard? Your colleague Lars Anderson wrote about Zach Hodges, who sounds like essentially an Ivy League version of the Blind Side. What about this young man and his draft chances?
It's a tremendous story, and I think Lars did a wonderful job profiling this guy. Like you mentioned there, he was homeless for a while. He was a family. He came from an abusive household. They were homeless. His mom had to have him living in a car for weeks and weeks. Worked his way up from that, worked his way to Harvard. One of the hardest working guys at the Harvard program, as a football player, as a scholar, as an athlete. We got to see him at the Senior Bowl, and what you say about a guy like that at the Senior Bowl is they belong, which means they're fast enough, alert enough, strong enough, physical enough, and that shows that they belong in the conversation. He's a guy who's probably going to get drafted. He's going to be one of those late round guys. Big linebacker, he's got to prove that he can be a rotational type guy, a special teams type guy. But I think teams will give him the benefit of the doubt going through. They know what he's gone through. They know what he's capable of mentally, and I think they'll get an understanding of what he's capable of physically as well.
And your latest column, I read it this morning. It's excellent, on Amir Abdullah, who you essentially said is the newest thinking man coming into the league, and he's sort of underneath that Gurley Gordon radar screen right now, entering the draft. What about this kid out of Nebraska?
I'm kind of mad at Lars Anderson because I'm trying to write about this Renaissance man, and Lars drops this brilliant thing about Hodges, a Harvard kid who was homeless. And Abdullah is very bright. He's somebody who's interested in law school. He's also a weightlifting champion, a very diverse group of interests for a very intelligent, very together young man. He can also run, and he can also catch, and he's incredibly fast and incredibly nifty. And the comparison is work done, and he kind of talks about that in the article. He gives me an earful about being compared to work done and how unfair that is. But that's the kind of guy this is. Somebody maybe you get at the top of the second, middle of the second, maybe even the top of the first if he fits your system, and you put him out there and, does he run for 1,400 yards? No, but he goes out there and, maybe he catches 60 passes. He's your third down guy. He's your changeup guy. And he comes in with such high character and such a passion for the game that he becomes a plus in the locker room as well.
Are we going to see any veteran players acquired on draft day for draft picks? Are we going to see, you sort of said Phillip Rivers is probably not going to happen. You took a little bit of steam out of that one. What about Peterson in Dallas?
I think Peterson's going to happen. I know Stephen Jones has kind of been emphatic, like we're not going to trade picks, we're not going to trade picks. It doesn't sound like them. Their method of operation for years has been to trade picks. You go back, you see Joey Galloway trades and all these other trades. I think that's going to happen. I think it'll happen, leading up to the trade, on Wednesday or Thursday morning.
I think it will.
Or you might see a trigger pulled on draft day. I think one thing they're looking for is where Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon look like they're going to go. And I think the Vikings and the Cowboys and maybe a team like the Cardinals or Raiders are going to be looking at that as well. If those guys start leaving the board, they're going to be interested in making a move for Peterson.
That's a lot of freight, though. Cardinals, Raiders, $13 million for. I mean, obviously the Raiders have the cap space. Cardinals had to reshuffle Larry Fitzgerald just to have him stay there.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that $13 million, that's a big figure. That's a large amount of money for a 30-year-old running back, regardless of the
absolutely.
pedigree.
And it's going to have to be some kind of sign and trade. So there's a third party in here, and that's Peterson and his agent, kind of agreeing to a sign and trade that favors the Raiders because they don't necessarily have to do it. Favors the Cowboys because they can get that kind of thing done between the available cash, Jerry Jones's creativity, and Peterson's willingness and eagerness to go back to Texas.
You going to be in Chicago, Mike?
I'm not going to be in Chicago. I'm like Jameson Marcus, and I'm going to be enjoying it from home, not with my grandma, though. I'll be enjoying it and covering it live for Bleacher Report, pick by pick.
All right, Mike. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to our next chat.
It was a pleasure, Rich.
You bet. That's Mike Tanier, Bleacher Report.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.